Hi, Yesenia.
All right, I hope everybody can see my screen. And it brought me to the end of my presentation. Great. Sorry about that. Yeah, so thanks for being here. And I hope this talk will help you. I hopefully will not be speaking too long. I kind of want this to be a conversation and opportunity for you to ask me any questions about career path and how to do grad school application or job search. Yeah, I hope we have quite a bit of time for you to ask questions, and I'll be happy to answer. So today I wanted to tell you a little bit about the path I've taken. So from the moment I moved in the United States 10 years ago, or a little bit over 10 years ago, and where I'm at today. So I think no two paths are the same. Yeah, so you never find another person who has the same story as you, and that's okay. It's really what you make of it. Um, so my path personally started, like I said, about 10 years ago, and it started at Houston Community College. So when I came in the country, I had been out of school following high school for about 5 years. I wasn't really entirely sure about what I wanted to do after high school, and so ended up just working in the hospitality industry back home in France, where I'm from, which was fine, but also taught me, like, I really don't want to do that as a career. So, but I knew already that I had an interest in biology, and I was really, um, excited about subjects like, how the human body works, and infectious diseases. So I already had a kind of a knack for that. But I also thought I didn't like school at all. And when I first came, my goal was to get the quickest low degree I could so I could go to work. So the first thing I wanted to do, I thought, was to be a physical therapist assistant, because you can complete those degrees within a couple of years, and then you can go to work. And HCC actually offers these type of degrees, but there's a few prerequisite courses that you have to take. One of them for me was English as a second language, so I had to take a semester of that. And then I started taking all my natural science prereqs. So I ended up taking a human anatomy and physiology course, which led to a second semester. I took a microbiology course. I took some anthropology courses too, which I thought were, incredibly interesting when you're thinking about evolution, and both physically and culturally. Um, and I found I really actually enjoyed going to school. I really found a renewed interest in, like, studying and being a good student at that too, right? And I thought it was very rewarding. And yeah, unfortunately, you get used to that. So throughout this time, I really didn't find it difficult to work really hard on my courses. And my A&P instructor at the time was looking for a supplemental instructor. So she asked me if I wanted to do that. So I ended up doing that for a few semesters at HCC. And then the microbiology instructor, same thing. And she was like, oh, you're doing that for Dr. Wagley, so why don't you come and do that for me? So I got the opportunity to do that and get paid a little bit as well. And I was basically going to the classes with the students who were taking the class and touring them, one extra day out of the week, where, I would go over some of the material and answer any questions that they might have on the subject. So I got to do that for the biology department. And at the same time, I was also touring languages. So my first language is French, and I had a really good level of German at the time as well. So I was tutoring these languages. So, finding opportunities here and there, or it was more about like just taking and accepting these opportunities because they kind of were thrown at me. But this really led me to kind of revisit my goals and expectations. And I thought, I don't want to stop right now. And that's where I found out about UHD and the Scholars Academy program more specifically. It's never a bad thing when somebody's offering a potential scholarship, when you're looking to go to school. So I thought that was really nice. And at the same time, since they're focusing on STEM, then it kind of aligned with what I wanted to do. So I decided to get a 4-year degree and get my bachelor's. So I transferred to UHD. And it was the most life-changing experience I've had. Honestly, just for me, it was about the exposure that I got, because I found, in retrospect, that a lot of times I let events kind of lead me in a certain direction, and because of interest and because I get excited about something, but I don't necessarily have that forethought about what comes next and why are you doing this and what's the end goal. But being part of Scholars Academy, you don't really have a choice. And you have to think about it, because you're going to advance and you're being exposed to different career options. And I think that was helpful for me because I come from a different country where things are structured a different way. And I really didn't think, being an older student in a sense, I didn't think that I even had any opportunities to go really far in terms of my education and then career opportunities. But having that exposure made me realize, and learn about what is out there and what are the different possibilities. I think a big part of that was the career fair. So I don't know if you guys still have that event, but it just makes you do it because you have to go, and then you have to make something out of it. So so by association, it actually is very beneficial. I also was fortunate to do undergrad research with Dr. Gulati. So I think at the time I heard that people were doing it, and I was starting to consider going to grad school. So and I knew she was, she had a few students who were working with her. So I approached her, and then I ended up joining the lab and working on biofilms. So that was a really good experience. And then since, I always feel like I don't have enough on my plate, I decided to enter the senior honors thesis program. And this actually really structured way of, starting to think about science and having that research mindset and kind of organize your work based on a hypotheses, and then you have to develop that, and you have to perform the research and draw your conclusions based on the analysis of your data. So it really actually is a good preparation if you're considering going to grad school. It's kind of like a mini thesis. It kind of introduces you to this type of work. And then you near graduation, and then you have to think about, well, what comes next, right? So there are a few things obviously you can do, right? You can continue going to school for one thing or another. You can enter the workforce, but whatever it is you want to do, you have to prepare for that. And I considered going to med school for a minute, but then I felt like, for me personally, it was maybe a little bit too structured, and it kind of funnels you into one career, and so and then it's long too. So that was a major factor for me, because I had a family at the time. So my daughter was born my last year of undergrad, so that definitely had to be part of my train of thought when I was thinking about a career. So I felt at the time that I had limited options in terms of geography. So I wanted to stay in the Houston area. So I didn't have the option to apply to tons of graduate school, in different states. So that was one thing. And then another thing that is, was considering is like, based on the programs that are around me, what are my research interests, and where does that align with some of their research programs that they might have, or the faculty that are part of those universities, and what kind of research they do. And yeah, and that kind of, I think it's important to point out some of my own shortcomings. I think, again, going back to always thinking about the next step, is that one thing that I didn't consider at all. I have to be honest. When I was thinking about graduate school, I was like, oh, I'll just get my PhD and that's the end of it. I never, ever at that point thought, okay, but what about next? Why are you wanting to get a PhD? And I think that the reason why at the time we're more practical, it allows you to go to school, you get a higher education degree, right? And you also get paid, and your tuition is paid when you go to graduate school. So, based on what, level of importance that has to you, right? So for me, it was relatively high because, again, I had a family to think about. So I was like, hey, that sounds amazing, let me do that. But I think that it would have been beneficial for me to think about the next step already at that point. So as you guys are considering, graduate school, medical school, other degrees, start to think about, why you're wanting that degree and where this degree may take you. It turned out great for me in the end, but it was not like a straight path. In graduate school, you'll find that there's a clear path after a PhD in the science, and there's a less clear one. And unfortunately, the clear path, currently there are not a whole lot of opportunities for graduates, right? So if you're considering a career in academia, for example, which means you will have your own research program, you'll be a PI or principal investigator at a research institution. So there's about one position like that for every 5 grad students entering a program today. So 20% only of the people getting a PhD today will have a position for them in academia. So other options, if you want to pursue academia, is to do, you do your postdoc after graduate school, and then this can lead to another postdoc, and then you end up in a precarious position where you never really quite make it to a tenure track position, because there just aren't a lot of that. You can also go to teaching, which my understanding is that there are not a whole lot of these positions either for graduates, and the path to these may be a little bit tricky as well. And then you can go to industry. So that means, you can do a postdoc in an industry setting. So you can work for a company like Pfizer and do a postdoc with them. you get paid better than in academia, that's for sure. But then you want to eventually transition to a scientist position within a company. So these are I'd say from what I've seen, the clear path after a PhD in science. And then there's less clear path, which I will talk about, but these are things that you have to be very proactive about, because unfortunately, graduate programs have not completely, they're starting to be aware that there's an issue for graduates after graduation, and that they are not doing a very good job at preparing PhD students for what comes after, if they wish to pursue a non-traditional career path. And so a lot of that work falls on you as a student to go out and figure out what is out there for a PhD graduate, and how to approach these careers, and how to build yourself to the point where somebody in a different industry is going to recognize your value. One thing I've found out throughout my PhD is that the value of a PhD is not necessarily recognized outside of academia and those more traditional paths. They think we're students. So we graduate with a PhD, and you've just been going to school for the past 5 or 6 years, which is entirely untrue. So it falls on you to recognize, what did you actually learn, and what position are you after graduation? Because you end up going to school for a couple of years out of your PhD, and then the rest you're working and you're an employee. And depending which lab you joined, you actually a project manager, right? So you figure out what your thesis work's going to be, and then you drive that project. You figure out what you need to do, and you figure out what reagents you need, and you purchase them, and you make your plan, and so these are the type of skills that you gather throughout your PhD that you really have to promote after you graduate. And so it's a matter of, like, regardless what career path you choose, I think is to recognize where are the skills that you're really accumulating outside of, oh, I know how to use this software, or I know how to do this particular thing. I think there's creative ways that you can really promote yourself when you're looking for a job, whether or not you have gone to graduate school even. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. Okay, so I ended up going to graduate school. So I was accepted in the biochemistry and molecular biology program at UTMB. And the way the program's set up, you perform rotations in different labs at the beginning of your PhD to try to figure out if the research is something you're into, and if the PI that drives the lab, if you enjoy their leadership skills and how they kind of manage their lab. These are the two things you kind of have to consider, right? Do I enjoy the research? But more importantly for me, do I enjoy the research environment? Do I get along with this person? How helpful are my colleagues and then my boss? I found that these were actually more important than the actual research that you end up doing. I ended up working on a project that was a polar opposite to what I had envisioned, right? So I was interested in infectious disease when I first joined UTMB, and I ended up working on something completely different. What did attract me to this lab, though, is that we have 2 research arms within the lab. One of them concerns positive strand RNA viruses. So these are flaviviruses such as Zika virus, dengue, and yellow fever. And I like to say we are in RNA biology lab. So we focus on the RNA molecule. And we're interested in finding out host protein and viral RNA interactions and how this can affect the fitness of the virus. And we're studying that at the molecular level. So we like to call ourselves molecular virologists. So we're not like your typical virologist just looking at infectious rate and how these are affected by, different variables. We're interested at the molecular level, how this works. And then the other theme in the lab also covers RNA biology and RNA binding protein and how they interact with RNA, but more under the scope of RNA splicing. So this is a process that occurs on the RNA molecule post-transcriptionally, and it affects gene expression. So you can modulate gene expression through RNA splicing. And we're interested in finding out the role of genetic variants in the modulation of RNA splicing. And this fits in the bigger theme of disease. And the type of disease we study are autoimmune disorders. So I actually got to do a little bit of both. I spent a lot of time exploring potential thesis projects. I started working on viruses. And actually, a month after I joined the lab, I was fortunate that, sounds terrible, but the Zika epidemic was in full blown at the time. So there was a lot of effort directed towards Zika virus. And the lab had some experience doing some high throughput work. So that's when you deal with a lot of different, for example, we worked on a screen of drugs that are already approved by the FDA that we could potentially repurpose to fight Zika virus. And obviously that allows to kind of shortcut the adoption of a drug, right? Because it's already gone through regulatory pathways and we know they're safe. So you could potentially use a drug that normally is used for reducing fever, and you use it for Zika virus and, to fight Zika virus infection. So months after I joined the lab, this project was in full blown. And since I didn't have a project at the time, then I ended up doing a lot of the work for that publication, which, it was rewarding. And I quickly got into like a high impact publication, which is never a bad thing. During that time, also, my boss asked me if I wanted to write part of a review on, the Zika virus epidemic. So I got to write with experts in the field at UTMB and other institutions. So that was really an honor. And, again, building your list of publication, which, depending on where you want to go after grad school may or may not be important. And I also helped a colleague, a postdoc in the lab, with his publication, which was on the other side of the lab. We call it the dark side of the lab. So he focused on RNA splicing and the importance of splicing of the interleukin-7 receptor and how it's important in multiple sclerosis. So, and at the time, it was just him working, and the paper had gone through a round of revisions at Cell, which is a high impact publication. So they often want a lot of stuff done to accept the paper. And so he needed hands to help. So I just offered help. And again, I ended up putting my name on another high impact publication. And then we wrote a review in Chemical Reviews about the biology of flaviviruses. And again, just grabbing those opportunities when they present themselves. This is kind of the theme, I think, for me for the past 10 years. And I really want to highlight that, is that, never turn down extra work. You're going to struggle because you're going to feel overwhelmed, but it will pay off at the end. Yeah, and then this looks like a success story on the right side, but it was actually a very difficult struggle for me. I struggled in the lab for the first 3 years, because even though I was part of various projects, my own personal projects didn't go all too well. So the first one I started was on Zika virus, and it was, again, there was so much going on in that research space that I got scooped like 2 or 3 times. That means somebody else was working on the same thing as me and published before. Just for background. So I moved on from that, and then I got a second project, and after about a year, we realized I was not really going anywhere, and then we didn't have the right expertise in the lab. And so this got shut down as well. And then I found myself at the beginning of my third year with no projects and nothing to show for the last 2 years. So it was tough, but I at this point I was like, I'll just take anything. And so I started looking at everything that was going on in the lab, and one area where there was not enough hands was the RNA splicing autoimmunity side. So I switched sides. We always laugh about that in the lab. I went to the dark side and started a project, and for another year, nothing worked. I was going through some things personally, which affected my work. I was not very focused. So nothing worked. Nothing I was doing worked. It was terrible. It was very difficult, to keep going and trying to figure it out, when nothing makes sense. But, I pushed through, and I think what I did in parallel kind of helped me keep the motivation going. Because with all this failure, I realized, oh my God, I cannot do this for the rest of my life. Like I cannot be at the bench for another minute. I'll do everything I can to graduate, but I just simply don't want to do bench work. I enjoy science. I like to talk about science. I like to communicate in all sorts of ways about science, but I can't do the science. So, well, then there I was, and I had to figure out what it is I wanted to do when I grew up. So I had to explore other career options. And fortunately, at the time, I had a friend who was about 2 years ahead of me in the program. And she was in the same situation where she did not want to pursue a career in academia or in research whatsoever. And so she got involved with a group in Houston. It's called Venture. If you guys are interested in alternative careers, whether it's now or whether you're gonna go to med school or graduate school, enter the workforce, you should definitely check them out. So what they do basically is that they promote the innovation space in the Houston area, and they're giving students opportunities to learn about alternative career paths. They have a consulting program, it's called Enrich, where they actually source consulting projects from local startups and companies. And then they get students, undergrad, med students, engineering students, graduate students, they put them in a team, and then you're actually doing the consulting work. So my friend told me about them, and she was like, just come to a meeting and check it out. And I did, and I found that, I myself with a lot of like-minded individuals, right, that were in the same situation, just trying to figure things out. I ended up doing a bunch of stuff, based off of that initial meeting that I went to, so I applied for their Enrich program. So I did 2 consulting projects. Both of them were with the Johnson & Johnson Center for Device Innovation. So the Johnson & Johnson has a space within TMC Innovation where they either house companies that are developing medical devices, or they're developing their own, early R&D type work for medical devices. So I worked on 2 projects where so one of them, just to give you a little bit of an idea what this looks like, the client was interested in finding out who their competitors were, or who they should be worried about in that space that they were working in. So we ended up doing a lot of intellectual property searches. So trying to figure out who was holding patents in that space, who was merging with another company and moving into the space based on patent search. So it's really, really cool. And then the second one, the client just wanted a little bit more background research on something called cardiac ablation. So it's like a surgery that helps people who have arrhythmia, their heart's just not functioning properly. So you can go and ablate nerves to restore the correct heartbeats. And there are issues that can arise from this surgery that can lead to complication or death in some cases if you're ablating too much. And so they're coming up with a catheter, that had sensors that could feel temperature. And then it was really, really cool. And so they wanted a bit more background information on what other technologies were out there that were doing similar things. I also ended up doing a paid internship with this company called Inveox. They're a German company that had gone through the TMC accelerator program. So companies that are very early on sometimes go through those programs to either create a network in a specific area. So here, the Texas Medical Center is very attractive for startups because they can run clinical trials, or they can push their R&D efforts. And sometimes they need help with their business plans, or they need help like if they're fundraising, trying to get money to fund their technology. And so I ended up doing some work for this company. They were interested in knowing which state was best to put their headquarters in. So again, something I had never done before, but that's where I want to point out that the soft skills that you develop as a PhD student can come in handy regardless of what you're looking at, right? So here I had to be creative, trying to, instead of asking a research biology question, I was asking a more business question, so how am I going to go about this? What's my hypothesis? What's my method? How am I going to figure this out and present that to my employer, right? And it was about looking at tax schemes and comparing between states, and quality of life, quality of the workforce, cost of real estate, schools, and all this stuff, and then coming up with a ranking system to score each state based on what this company cared about. And I work for a non-for-profit that promotes technology geared towards women's health. And so I did some work for them, and I'm currently doing some contract work for this company, Thermocuff. They have a cold and heat therapy device they're developing with some new patented technology, and they needed help sourcing funding and writing grants to obtain funding from the government. So I'm currently working with them. And how can you find those opportunities? Research within yourself to figure out what it is you want to do, and then research out there to find the opportunities that match, and then reach out to people, and then get involved, go to events. You never know, you might not meet one person that's interesting to you, but you might just need the one that will make a difference somehow in your life. Okay, so then I kind of want to switch to job search, because I graduated in November last year, and had to find a job, because based on my career interests, that's what I needed to do. So just a little bit about resume building. What I want to point out that I found out, going through the process, is that a lot of times, we find ourselves thinking that we don't have any experience, so we don't have anything to offer. And again, I think the importance here is about being creative and looking back at your experience and your background, and trying to draw from that, what kind of skills you may have. And these can be soft skills, because these are just as valuable as some of the hard skills that you may have. Yeah, I know how to do this particular thing, or I know how to use flow cytometry, or I know how to use this software. At the end of the day, you know, if you made it this far, you're already a pretty smart person. So whatever technology you're required to use, I think you'll figure out how to use that. I think a lot of times what employers are looking for are good fits. So they're looking for somebody who fits within their company culture. And I find that sometimes that's more important than, you know, whatever technology you know how to use and whatnot. And then identify where you've made a difference and use metrics, use number. When I was a Girl Scout cookies, I sold $1,000 worth of cookies every time around. You know, that has value. I was a camp counselor every single summer since I was 15. For me personally, that shows to me that you went out there and found yourself a job, and that you repeatedly held that job because somehow you were trusted to do the job. That has meaning and value. And sometimes we're not really thinking about it because, like, oh, well, who's going to care that I was a counselor? No, I watched over 50 kids every summer. I worked at Walmart and I interacted with hundreds of customers. I worked in a team environment when I was at McDonald's, you know, and, you know, these are all things that are very important to point out to future employers. Another thing that's important and that was instrumental for me is to build my network and let them know, hey, I'm graduating, I'm looking for work. And the important things here, I think, is to identify a few roles that you might think may interest you, so that you can actually inform your network, like, I'm looking for work, but I'm looking for this type of work. And that can also be just a job description. You know, that's a place where I was personally, I didn't know what job title I wanted to have. And, you know, even up until I started my new role. But I had an idea of what it is I wanted to do. You know, I wanted to interact with people. I wanted, you know, to stay in the life science healthcare space. I wanted my job to be versatile, and I don't want to do the same thing every day. These are the things that are important to me, and these can help drive, you know, what kind of opportunities you may go after. And then reach out to potential employers, managers, employees, and have conversations. You know, LinkedIn is a great resource for that. So if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, I suggest you guys create one now, and start building your network. And I found, honestly, from my experience and from some of the others I've heard about, people actually do respond on LinkedIn. So you could, you know, message the CEO of a startup, and, you know, they might just respond. If you want to contact one of the managers and say, hey, you know, I see you work for this company, what do you do? You know, what type of work do you do, and do you guys have any openings that you'd suggest, you know, I should apply for? And reach out to employees. What's the company culture? Do you like your job? What do you do on a daily basis? You know, I found that a lot of times job titles are unhelpful. If you look at my current job title, it tells you nothing about what I do every day. And another thing is to offer your time, sometimes for free. I found, again, from my experience and some of other people I know, this can actually lead to something really important in your life. And again, reach out and say, hey, here I am. I love what you're doing. This is what I can do. Do you need help? I'm willing to volunteer my time to help you. A friend of mine graduated from the biochemistry program, and he had not done all this stuff I've done during my PhD. And he had a really hard time finding a job. It took him months. But he ended up offering to work for free for this startup. And he did, I think, cell culture work. And he did such a great job that at the end, they felt bad not paying him. So they actually hired him after a month or so. So he got himself a job. And then while doing that, he met other people that then, you know, offered him another job, and I think he's director of something for like a data analytics company. I think they sell data sets to customers looking to draw some insight out of it. But he has a great job, just like, you know, working for free for maybe a month. So sometimes, you know, this may be a good thing to do. Okay, and then finally, I got a job. And I can really say that without my network, I would not have that job. It's a very unusual job. So I'll tell you what it is. So I'm the life science specialist for the UK Department for International Trade, which again, you know, tells you nothing really from the title, but my role is to promote investments in the life science sector towards the north of England. So in short, I help companies who are located in the US, so the US companies, setting up operations in the UK. So, you know, I put them in, so I'm kind of like a consultant, right? So I put them in touch with the right people, or if they're willing, if they're looking to set up clinical trials over there, you know, I explain the process to them, and I put them in touch with the right people. So some of the stuff I do, so I do a lot of research, looking for opportunities in the UK and try to match them with some of the companies that are in the area here. Lots of networking, collaborating with colleagues on special projects. And what I find I like so far is, you know, it's a very fast pace, it's very versatile. I do a lot of different things, never really the same thing 2 days in a row. And again, you know, I got this job because I had a network that vouched for me. Because if you look at the job description as it was and my resume, there wasn't a clear overlap between the two. Not that I couldn't do the job, it's just that an employer who doesn't know me, looking at my resume, may have thought, you know, she looks great, you know, but, you know, I don't really think this may be the right person. But I had several different people send them my resume saying, hey, Geraldine's great. I think she'd be a great fit for your team and a great fit for the role. And it, you know, it's really how I got this job is leveraging my network. So that's why I think it's so important. A few lessons learned to kind of finish things up. I think, you know, I can tell you to be prepared for failure, and that's valid, I think, for applying for graduate school, while you're in grad school, or in whatever trade school you're in, if you're in the workplace. But, you know, it's more about learning to recognize the blessings in disguise. Sometimes things happen for a reason. And then, you know, always look on the bright side. And then, you know, network. I believe in active networking, not just showing up to an event and hoping that you'll make a connection. I think there are different ways that you can build a network without just having to go to networking events. You know, I think that's a little bit outdated. So all the things I've talked about today, you know, reaching out to people, you know, people love to talk about their experiences, just like I'm doing right now. And they love helping. When we look at women in science, there are not that many of us, but those who are, you know, we're wanting to pay it forward and to pay back also, right, for the help we've gotten. So so reach out and then leverage your network. And so use me, you know, I'm here and I'm willing to help. So again, if you have a LinkedIn profile already, please connect with me. You know, email me. I'll do my best to answer any more questions you may have and to help out, you know, with whatever you need. So that's all I have for you today. Hopefully you guys have questions for me.
Wonderful. Ooh, very good. So let's get some questions. Paolo, anything? You're in a different area of STEM, but there's a lot of relevance to what she's shared with us. You have any thoughts?
Yes, ma'am. No, I think to me, I would just really kind of add how you overcame, ask rather, not add, ask how you overcame personal, you know, your own personal challenges that you went through, as well as handling that with the academic or the professional side of it, the STEM side of it.
Yeah,
How
so
did you reconcile the two worlds, kind of?
yeah, so for me, it goes back to the network in a sense. It was really relying on the core people I had in my life, and getting that support. You know, first of all, I think it's being upfront and talk about your issues. I never hid that from my PI. And I'm fortunate that he's very compassionate individual, but letting key people know that, hey, I am struggling, and admitting that to yourself, right? I mean, I think that's the hardest thing, is to admit, like, yeah, I'm not doing well right now. And it's transpiring in every aspect of my life. And then having a conversation about that with your superior, supervisor, however, whichever situation you're in, and let them know, like, I'm not doing well. I don't know what to do. They may just have like the right pointer, point you to a person that may help. And then rely on your friends, your family, refocus on that. And just tell yourself that, you'll get through it, whatever it is, or, somebody told me, like, you've hit rock bottom, so there's only one way to go. It's up, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Thank you
Great.
so much. Thank you so much. That speaks a lot to just some of the things that I go through also. It's very important to do that, and it's so great to hear that from you,
Yeah.
having that
And
extension on you.
he's about to graduate too, so
Ooh.
Yes, ma'am.
forks in the road. Yeah.
So what's
Yes,
next?
ma'am.
Great. Do we have any
Thank-
other questions from anyone? Dr. Galati, anything? You know her very well.
Yeah, I think this, I guess I'm a little pleasantly surprised, but I didn't realize that she would go in a different path. But I think what I would say is that, Geraldine always showed a lot of initiative. She's right. You have to, I tell, my kids all the time, you should never let an opportunity pass you by. So that's super important. And because you never know where it's going to lead you. So I think the fact that you guys are in the Scholars Academy and doing a variety of things, that says a lot about you already. And, like Geraldine said, if something does happen and somebody tells you about something, look it up. In fact, I wrote down in Venture, I'm going to look it up myself.
Me too.
Yeah.
I think it may be a good partnership for you, because we really have people from all walks of life. There's tons of undergrad that are actually participating in the programs, right? And because they're more interested in entering the workforce. And then we have people who participate in our programs, and then they've gotten a job with a startup right out of undergrad,
Right.
and this could lead to whatever. And yeah, I really believe in seizing the moment, and yes, there's a part of it's being proactive, but once you on that path, you're going to have so much coming, and it's just a matter of like not being scared that, oh, I don't think I can do it. Just assume you can do it, and then you'll figure it out. This thing, fake it until you make it. And I think for women especially, it's so important to practice, because I think we're often scared that I've never done that in my life. I don't think I can do it. Well, if somebody's offering you to do it, then do it. And and you'll figure it out,
Well, and I was going to say, I'm not, I'm not surprised that she's gone that other route, because she was she's a people person. And so, eventually, unless the lab is, and you get to this level, U10B or elsewise, it's very serious business. It's not really friendly. And so I can see quite clearly why she chose that path, but being able to choose that path with a PhD, that's the key. That path may not have come to you did you not have, because you learned so many lessons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. For sure.
Anyone else? Anyone else have a question? You seniors that are out there?
If you have a question about applications and stuff like that, I'm happy to answer these. Yeah, that was not my favorite part of anything. It's just, I think putting yourself out there is difficult for a lot of people, right? And in both like applying for graduate school and applying for jobs, you have to promote yourself, and that's hard. And I think, again, for women, it's even harder.
Right.
Sometimes.
Right.
You have to tell yourself, I'm a rock star, and I can do this, and I'm the best person for this position because all these reasons. So yeah.
I think, and also I think that what Geraldine said about, it doesn't really matter what your project is. And we were always told that too, it doesn't matter what you work on, the skills you learn are going to be very similar, and always try to find a person that you're going to get along with. And I think that's super important, especially if you go to grad school. Always make sure that you like the PI and you like the people that you're working with. So ask questions,
True.
talk to other people in the lab. I mean, I had a really good lab as in my PhD, but then when I started my postdoc, he was not a nice man. In fact, I was going through some personal stuff and I was honest with him, but he didn't care, so I knew that it was time for me to get out of there. So I actually left my postdoc within 2 years, which is not normal. You normally end up staying a little longer, but it was the best thing I did because it was not a good atmosphere for me to be in.
Yeah.
So I think you have to be really careful and choosy.
I think it's valid for job as well.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yes. A job description that fits everything you want, but if it occurs in a bad environment, you're going to be miserable because you're not going to get that support, and things may work out well for you until a certain point. And things happen in life, we hit roadblocks, and that's when you need an environment that's supportive. And it's very true for lab as well. A lot of people are so focused, this is the project I want to do, this is the research I want to do, but you're going to have a hard time getting that done if you're not in a supportive environment. So yeah, it's so important to find a good fit rather than a perfect job description, research program. Plus a lab you sign up for a long time.
Yeah.
When you're studying a PhD and you sign up for a lab, you're stuck there for a few years. So.
Yeah. Brenda or Knock, do y'all have any questions or comments?
Yes, I had a question.
Okay.
Mostly because I'm doing my bachelor's. I'm in engineering technology, so I'm not exactly, related to what you've studied, but I am interested in a PhD. But I'm a mother and I want to go into the workforce right after I finish my bachelor's degree. Is it possible to do a PhD program while I'm working full time? Or what are your comments about that?
So my experience is you can do a PhD as a single parent. That's what I did. I ended up a single parent in my first year of PhD.
Yeah.
So you can, and you don't need necessarily another job next to that, because
because they're paying you, right?
They're paying you, right? So just to give you an idea, I started out at, I think it was 28,000 for my stipend a year, and then we finished at so we're at 31 or so right now. So they actually end up increasing. UTMB is pretty competitive stipend. They pay for your health insurance, so that's not the one thing you don't have to worry about. And then, depending on what you're looking for, you get a certain level of help, from like governmental agencies or
Right.
stuff like that. I'm not going to say and lie, it was hard. You know, it was hard financially for sure,
Yeah.
but you know, I managed to do it, you know, so you can do it too.
Yeah.
But I understand, you know, you considering the workforce, but if PhD is really what you want to do and where you want to go, then I think you should do it. Yeah.
Great. Knock, how about you? Anything? Okay, she's, oh, are you trying to say something? Maybe not. Well, we're almost at time. I don't want to cut anybody off if they have anything else. Richard. I think his name's Richard. I had him along. Richmond.
Yeah, it's Richmond, Dr. Parker. It's
Yeah.
Richmond.
Oh, well, it's only 3 years we've known each other. But anyway, Richmond. So you're about to graduate.
Of
You have
course,
any
yes.
any questions, thoughts?
So I'm actually looking to, get into med school.
Mhm.
But like you said, if any opportunity comes, if it's, grad school, then, but yeah, my main focus is med school. But I just had a quick question. So I kind of missed the first half of your session. I came a bit late, but I don't know if you might have touched on it. So I just wanted to ask, was it your dream to, to find yourself in the STEM field, or you kind of just stumbled on it on the way?
So I'd say that's probably the one thing where it was pretty evident to me, was that whatever I was going to do, it had to be in STEM, you know, whether it was in a clinic or, you know, research or business in my case, right? You know, that's one thing even when I was looking for a job, that was one thing I was not willing to compromise. It had to be, you know, healthcare, life sciences. So that's one thing I figured out early on, for sure.
Great. And I'll just share a story. I remember when Geraldine was transferring into UHD, and she'd been accepted and everything. She was talking to me about, I write in my office about SA, and she was adamant, med school, med school, med school. But the problem, I mean, the issues were the exposure hadn't been there. So she got a great deal of exposure. And as she worked with Dr. Galati, she really enjoyed the microbiology research. So you change, people change. You'll go to work in one area and you'll figure out, oh, that's not quite the area I want. And, you know, you'll go get a master's and get a broader area. But, you know, I think her willingness to open to those experiences, that's her part of her whole talk, has put her in a position where she can choose what she wants to do. So, well, we're gonna thank you for that question too, Richmond. I want to thank Geraldine and everybody who came. This was a wonderful talk. It's just so rewarding to see the alumni or alumnus who comes back, and you are giving back. We do appreciate that. It's a very small honorarium we give, but nonetheless, the insight that you offer the students is just amazing. You know, if they take heed, it'll take them a good long way. And we thank you so much. Dr. Galati, you want to say any end words, and then we'll give it to Mercedes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Geraldine. It was great to see you and see you taking the next step. And I would tell all the students, use Geraldine. You know, she has a lot of ideas, so contact her. I would, write all that down on the left side, but she's got her email address and the LinkedIn. I would definitely use her. So
please do. Please
really appreciate it.
Yeah, if you have questions about anything that I've talked about today or stuff that you're wondering about, you know, I mean, I think I haven't even talked about all the stuff I've done really, and what kind of people I've encountered. So if you're looking at, if you want a job in the startup space, contact me. If you want an internship, contact me. If you have questions, contact me. So
Wonderful. Okay, Mercedes, you want to close it out?
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Schott. It was very informative, and even I learned something. So, so it's never too late. So thank you so much. We don't want to take up any more of your time. And everybody, can we show some appreciation by clapping?
Or put your little thumbs up or something. Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
thank you,
Okay,
everyone.
Geraldine, thanks so much.
There.
All right, and Mercedes will be in contact to firm up the other. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a good week.
Bye, everybody. You see how quickly they leave us? I'm out.